Evo Morales arrives in Mexico after facing political persecution and death threats in Bolivia. Thousands march from El Alto to the city of La Paz to oppose the coup and its leaders. And protesters block highways and flood into Santiago as a general strike paralyzes Chile. From the headquarters of Telesur English in Quito, Ecuador, this is From the South, and I'm Camila Escalante. Bolivia's coup-ousted President Evo Morales has arrived in Mexico, where he's being granted political asylum by the government of President Andres Manuel Lopez Obrador.
I want to tell you that we are very thankful because the President of Mexico have saved our lives. Why did I say that? On the 9th of November, on Saturday, when I arrived in the tropical zone of Cochabamba, a member of the security team of the army informed us and showed me messages and told me of phone calls that they should hand me over in exchange for $50,000 the day before we resigned. And that's why we are very grateful for saving our lives. But I also want to say, brothers and sisters, while I'm alive, we will continue in politics. As long as I live, the struggle will continue, and we are sure that the peoples of the world have the right to free themselves, to liberate themselves. We thought we had finished with oppression and discrimination, with humiliation, but it's reappearing with other groups who don't respect life, much less their country. It will be part of the ideological and programmatic struggle and cultural and social struggle. Brothers and sisters, if there is something, if I have committed some crime, it's being indigenous. If the Vice President has committed some crime, it's implementing social programs for the humble and the poorest sectors, seeking social justice. And I'm convinced that there will only be peace when we can guarantee social justice.
Thousands of residents marched from the city of El Alto to La Paz. They've not accepted the coup and are calling those who carried out the coup traitors, racists, and say that Luis Fernando Camacho is an anti-democrat. Organized indigenous women and men and social movements are rejecting the steps being taken by the influential right-wing sectors, primarily from the Department of Santa Cruz, in their efforts to persecute lawmakers of Evo Morales' movement towards socialism. Meanwhile, police and the armed forces have taken steps to repress El Alto protesters. Thousands carry the Ripala flag. They headed towards Murillo Square, outside of the Legislative Assembly, where lawmakers have attempted to move forward with an extraordinary session, but without a quorum to do so. The opposition lawmaker Janine Áñez, who would become Bolivia's interim president, insisted that an extraordinary session of the Legislative Assembly must be held this afternoon in order to approve the resignations and to be able to make way for new appointments. However, lawmakers from Evo Morales' Mass Party did not attend, and many are now victims of intimidation and threats. Reports say that a number of Mas lawmakers have sought protection at Mexico's embassy in La Paz, along with their families.
Posteriormente, de manera extraordinaria, Afterwards, in an extraordinary way, we have summoned for 4 p.m. an assembly session to consider and approve the resignation of the President and Vice President of the state. We think that it is much more important for the country to be at peace, for people to be calm, and to take into account formalities. I think a country can go ahead without a state leader, and us, lawmakers, are in the obligation to respond to all Bolivians. Vandalism, chaos. Not a single Bolivian wants more. I appeal to all to not go through the dramatic situation we went through yesterday, the situation of terror we lived through yesterday.
The main trade union confederation in Bolivia, the COB, has given the leaders of the coup 24 hours to restore constitutional order or face indefinite strike.
Facing this disorder, chaos, constitutional order downfall, and faced with a political crisis that is out of control, the COB Union Federation, as the only central workers' organization, says to the civic and political leaders who have caused all this chaos, division, and pain among the Bolivian people that we give you 24 hours to establish constitutional order, social peace, and the unity of the Bolivian people, and avoid more bloodshed, tears, mourning, and violence. Our country does not deserve this. History will judge them one day, but meanwhile, if there is no solution within 24 hours, the COB will be forced to call an indefinite general strike with the mobilization of all its regional sections and affiliates to La Paz to guarantee and restore order, social peace, and respect to democracy of the country.
And from the march in La Paz, our correspondent Alejandro Kirk has the latest.
They came by the thousands from El Alto to downtown La Paz to express rage, indignation. Their symbol, the flag of the indigenous people of Latin America, was disrespected, humiliated by the cops, by the police, by the army, who took it away from their uniforms. Today they apologized, but that is not enough. And one more thing, they are protesting because Evo Morales was forced to leave the country. They say, literally, Mesa, Camacho, we want your head. That's what they are saying. They want Evo Morales back. They want their country back. That's what they say, and they say it loud.
A public funeral and street procession was held in El Alto, where victims of Monday's confrontations with pro-coup police were being honored. In the audio, the resident who filmed this video puts the blame for the death squarely on the police and says that there has been no media reporting of this or documentation of other events surrounding the people's uprising and resistance to the coup which is taking place. The person filming also decries the treatment of the Huipala flag, saying that they have no understanding of its history. The Organization of American States has held an extraordinary session to discuss the situation in Bolivia. Caribbean nations like Antigua and Barbuda have heavily condemned the coup against President Morales and demanded that the OAS Council acknowledge this.
No statement, declaration, or resolution from this permanent council would be fair, objective, and impartial if it does not express grave concern about the military intervention in Bolivia that demanded the resignation of a president legitimately in office and the arrest and detention of several persons. Indeed, since last Sunday, Bolivia has been under the control of a military group.
And meanwhile, Chair of CARICOM Nations Anton Edmonds of St. Lucia has rejected acts of violence in the country and stressed the importance of non-intervention by external actors in Bolivia's internal affairs.
The Caribbean countries of the Bahamas, Barbados, Belize, Dominica, Grenada, Guyana, Jamaica, St. Kitts and Nevis, St. Lucia, Suriname, and Trinidad and Tobago express serious concern over the complex and evolving situation in Bolivia. We reject all acts of violence, regardless of their origin, including any that target ethnic groups and that threaten stability and the defense of democracy in Bolivia. We urge all political, civil, and international and institutional actors, including the security forces, the military, and the police, to act within the framework of the full respect for the rule of law and in adherence to the Constitution of that country. Encourage the restoration of the constitutional provisions for the re-establishment of national leadership, including the holding of elections without delay.
And Venezuelans marched in solidarity with the Bolivian people. Members of the Venezuelan United Socialist Party and other social movements headed through Caracas, following an anti-imperialist rally outside of the Bolivian embassy. They saluted the Bolivian people for their resistance to the coup and warned the United States not to try to promote a similar coup in Venezuela.
I think that only the people can save the people. What happened in Bolivia was a coup d'etat, but the people are taking to the streets against neoliberalism, and we are in the streets to defend President Nicolás Maduro and to defend the people of Bolivia.
Evo, we Venezuelans are with you. As President Nicolás Maduro says, the Bolivian people are resisting, and if they think they can come here and do the same as they are doing in Bolivia, they are badly mistaken.
What happened in Bolivia is shameful for all decent people in the world. It was a blow by the international right led by the government of Donald Trump, with a very bitter racist right in Bolivia. But the most important thing is how the Bolivian people are reacting and resisting. So we in the International Congress of Afro-Descendants in Venezuela are in solidarity with the people of Bolivia.
Speaking at the International Congress of Afro-Descendant Peoples, Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro once again rejected the coup in Bolivia and made an appeal to the Bolivian armed forces.
Le hago un llamado al alto mando militar de Bolivia.
I make a call on the high command of the armed forces in Bolivia. Be aware of what you are doing and what you'll be doing. The whole world is watching you, and history is watching you, and will judge you. Listen to the voice of history. Your commander-in-chief, according to the Constitution and to the people's vote, has a name, and that is Evo Morales. And you must reinstate him in power, and you must respect the life of the Bolivian people. Stop these coup adventures.
The South African Communist Party, the SACP, has unequivocally condemned the coup in Bolivia, calling it an intensification of the imperialist aggression against the peoples of Latin America. In a statement released by the party, the party said that the externally organized coup against the democratically elected government of President Evo Morales amounts to the suppression of the Bolivian people's right to self-determination and sovereignty. The SACP has also called on all working class movements across the world to mobilize against the coup. We'll take a short break now. Join us again in a minute.
Aquí en Acapulco, antes decían, hay un muerto. Ahora dicen, otro muerto.
Hace 10 años era otro México, porque se podía vivir con una relativa tranquilidad. Había cosas que nos alarmaban, pero nada como la barbarie que estamos viviendo actualmente.
Yo me imagino la gente que trajeron aquí. ¿Ves? Y me duele enormemente porque pudieron haber estado gritando con todo su corazón, con toda su alma y nadie los escuchaba.
Welcome back. A general strike has brought much of Chile to a grinding halt. Tens of thousands turned out to march in another huge demonstration in the capital, Santiago. After almost 4 weeks of protests against inequality and the neoliberal system, more than 100 trade unions and other movements joined the call to paralyze industries, commerce, and transport. Union leaders say that 90% of the workers in the public sector joined the strike, and between 60 and 70% in the private sector.
Y esta movilización de hoy This mobilization today, which is an ultimatum to the government, is very clear and precise. What workers across the country have said, men and women, is that we do not want a constituent Congress as the government proposes. What we want is to draw up a new constitution through a constituent assembly. That is the debate in our country now. We invite all political forces to debate this and not keep on as if nothing was happening in Chile, passing budget laws that do not at all meet people's need, or pension laws that do not take account of what people have been demanding in the streets.
Colombian President Iván Duque has appointed Carlos Holmes Trujillo as the new defense minister. His predecessor, Guillermo Botero, resigned last week after it was revealed that he had concealed the death of 8 miners killed in a military bombing raid against dissidents of the FARC.
Dr. Carlos Holmes Trujillo has been Minister of Education, has been Minister of the Interior, has been an extraordinary Chancellor, and now assumes the position of Defense Minister.
The British Virgin Islands is mourning the loss of its former Premier, Ralph O'Neill. He passed away on Monday and had been ill for some time. O'Neill, who was about a month shy of his 86th birthday, held the distinction of being the longest-serving Premier of the British territory. He had retired from active politics in 2015 after some 40 years as an elected member of Parliament, from 1975 through to 2015. O'Neill is remembered as a leading Caribbean statesman who commanded great respect among the leaders of the overseas territories. As Trinidad and Tobago prepares for local government polls on December 2nd, the Election and Boundaries Commission said nomination day went off without a hitch on Monday. The ruling People's National Movement, the PNM, and Opposition United National Congress, the UNC, are the only 2 parties to submit full teams of 139 candidates each. Several small parties are also contesting certain areas. Meanwhile, a few people from both the PNM and the UNC are running as independent candidates in crucial battleground areas. Registration day was a colorful event with some candidates parading to EBC offices, to TASA music, or accompanied by teams of high-ranking party officials such as ministers, MPs, and senators. The political situation in Bolivia is a reflection of how Western countries continue pushing a regime change agenda on a global scale. We spoke to Zimbabwean political analyst and journalist Gibson Nicazino about the African perspective regarding what has happened in Bolivia. Here's what he had to say.
Unfolding in Bolivia currently are hard lessons to Africa. When you look at the geopolitics, the issue of resources, and the issue of total control of nations' interests. So what's happening in Bolivia today is typically what happened to Libya, to Tunisia, to the DRC, and also even in Egypt, where the foreign powers, they are meddling in politics that are going on in Africa just to pursue their interests. So as a hard lesson, African nation states should be able to protect their sovereignty, and at the same time, the most important aspect is to know that in this era of contemporary politics, no country will be able to protect another country's interests unless people from this country make that an order that we want to have our interests protected by this state. This only means that the interests of any country are there to be protected by the people of that country. So it's quite a sad development of what's happening in Bolivia, but also it's an eye-opener to African states so that they know who to run to. That is their people they should run to when they want to protect their interests and sovereignty. These neo-colonial powers, they are interested in causing confusion, loot resources, and at the same time cause chaos in which they want to be saviors.
South African trade unions have rejected a plan by the national airline to retrench almost 1,000 workers. The Association of Cabin Crew Workers and the National Union of Metal Workers said that the plan by South African Airways is irresponsible, especially at a time when the country is grappling with high unemployment. The unions have accused management of using the threat of job cuts to force workers to drop their demands for an 8% pay rise. And still in South Africa, a strike by the bus drivers in the capital Pretoria has left thousands of commuters stranded. Bus drivers withdrew their services on Monday following a collapse of talks between the workers' union and the employer, Pretoria City Council. The workers are demanding an upward adjustment of their pay scale. We'll take a short break now. Join us again after this.
De un modelo que quiere priorizar el beneficio económico frente a la situación de las personas y los derechos humanos.
Documentary Telesur presents the struggle of popular sectors of Spain for the defense of their rights in the face of the indolence of the state and the large lobbyists, when the drops become rain. Sunday, only on Telesur.
Welcome back. Kenyan President Uhuru Kenyatta has officially opened the International Conference on Population and Development. This year marks the 25th anniversary of the Nairobi meeting, otherwise referred to as the ICPD 25 Summit. The three-day event covers various themes, including advancing gender equality and securing sexual and reproductive health for all. World leaders, representatives of NGOs, business leaders, and community groups will outline their commitment to end preventable maternal deaths, meet women's demands for family planning, and stop violence against women and girls by the year 2030.
Let us bear in mind the fact that the most important participants in this summit are actually not in this conference. And you may be wondering who I am referring to. I am referring to the 1 in 5 women from all corners of the world that this year alone will experience gender-based violence, most likely from someone who is close to them.
At least 5 civilians have been killed in an attack in Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo. The attack is suspected to have been carried out by the Allied Democratic Forces. Local residents have blamed the United Nations peacekeeping mission for not doing enough to protect civilians in the area, as the attack took place near the UN camp. The attack happened a few days after another key leader of a militant group was killed by the DRC military in an ongoing government operation which began last month.
I know the slogan of the United Nations Organization Stabilization Mission in the Democratic Republic of Congo. It is protecting civilians, protecting peace. If they really wanted to protect peace, civilians would not have been killed just outside their base. It is almost like they are only here to facilitate the violence to continue because they say it is necessary to protect the minority people. So, it is perhaps the enemy who kills us. It seems it is the minority people.
Business operations have ceased in Lebanon as protests continue in the streets. Banks and schools were closed and protesters prevented state institution employees from going to work, calling them to join the demonstrations. Dozens of university students joined the protests demanding an independent judiciary and the resignation of the government, which they say is inefficient and corrupt.
The president earns 6 salaries from the state and his people are on the streets dying of hunger. His people are sick on the streets and unable to get care. His people are on the streets, children not getting an education. What else can I hope for from him? Nothing. We are staying on the streets and we're going to achieve our demands. God willing, we will achieve them. Well, achieve them by force because it's our right.
And we leave you with a message of solidarity for President of Bolivia, Evo Morales, from the musician and founder of Pink Floyd, Roger Waters.
Evo Morales, if you see this, More power to you. I hope your exile is short. Your people need you. They need a leader like you. You're the first indigenous leader in the whole of South America. You've done a great job. You've pulled so many of your people out of poverty and given them a sense of dignity and worth. You brought the rule of law and you brought democracy. And that, hopefully, only on a temporary basis, has been ripped away from them by greed.
We've come to the end of this news brief. You can find these and many other stories on our website at telesaurenglish.net. And we're on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For Telesur English, I'm Camila Escalante. Thank you for watching.
Who's moving the chessmen? What interests motivate the actors behind each event? The board is deployed there. Critical move. Investigates every event from